My name's Jake. I'm 26 now, but everything started unraveling when I was 17. Back then, I didn't know what gaslighting was. I didn't know what emotional manipulation looked like. I thought it was normal for parents to compare you to your siblings, to shift rules depending on the mood, and to quietly punish you for things you couldn't control. I didn't even realize how much of myself I had learned to silence until the day I was told I wasn't allowed to apply for college, because my older sister had flunked out, and my success would make her feel worse. That was the beginning. But honestly, it had started way before that. I'm the youngest of two. My sister, Rachel, is 2 years older than me, and growing up, the sun rose and set on her in my parents' eyes. If she got a C on a test, it was the teacher's fault. If she crashed the car, it was because the roads were icy. If she lied, it was because she was under stress. Me? If I got a 97 instead of a 100, they'd ask what happened to the other 3 points. I remember being 9 and getting a perfect score on a math test. I showed it to my mom, hoping for that spark of pride. She glanced at it and said, "You're good at math. Rachel's the one who needs the encouragement." That was the script. Rachel needed the attention. Rachel needed the help. Rachel needed the bigger slice, the first pick, the last word. I got used to playing the supporting character in my own home. My job was to be stable, quiet, easy. That was the word my mom used the most. "Jake, you've always been so easy. Thank you for not giving us trouble." It took me years to realize that easy just meant invisible. By high school, I had learned to work around it. I kept my head down, excelled in school, joined clubs, even got a part-time job. I wasn't trying to be exceptional. I just wanted options. I figured if I couldn't get validation at home, maybe I could build a life where I didn't need it. Rachel, meanwhile, had bounced through 2 different high schools, failed multiple classes, and was constantly getting into fights with my parents. But they still treated her like she was some fragile little vase they had to protect. I was the duct tape keeping the house running, and she was the crystal they kept polishing even when it was cracked beyond repair. Senior year, I applied to 6 colleges in secret. I didn't tell my parents because I already knew how they'd react. I used my own money for application fees and asked my favorite teacher, Mr. Klein, to write my letter of recommendation. I still remember the way he smiled when I told him my situation. "Jake," he said, "you're the kind of kid who's going to change the world. Don't let anyone clip your wings." That meant the world to me. It still does. I got into 5 out of the 6 schools, including my top choice, a small but well-regarded university out of state that offered me a partial scholarship. I remember opening the acceptance letter in my bedroom, heart pounding, barely able to breathe. It felt like someone had cracked a window in my suffocating little life. I could see a future. I could feel it. But when I finally told my parents a few weeks later, everything came crashing down. It was a Sunday morning. Rachel had just come home from another failed community college semester, and the whole house was tense. I figured the news might lift the mood. I waited until we were all in the kitchen, Dad sipping his coffee, Mom washing dishes, Rachel scrolling on her phone, and I pulled the acceptance letter from my backpack and said, "Hey, I got in. My top school. And they offered me a scholarship." Silence. Not the good kind. Like, wow, we're so stunned with pride. No, this was heavy. Cold. My mom didn't even look up from the sink. "Jake," she said, drying her hands on a dish towel, "we really wish you had talked to us before doing something like this." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" I got in. I thought you'd be happy." My dad sighed, setting his mug down slowly. "It's not that we're not proud," he said, carefully, like he was stepping around a landmine. "It's just, we're still dealing with everything that happened with Rachel. You know how hard it was when she had to come home. Going to college didn't work out for her, and we're still trying to help her get back on her feet." Rachel didn't say a word. She didn't even look up. "I'm not Rachel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I worked really hard for this." "That's not the point," my mom cut in. "Don't you think it would hurt her? Watching you leave for college while she's still trying to find her way. It would be cruel, Jake." Cruel. That word hit me like a slap. I stood there, stunned, while they told me, gently, rationally, like they were doing me a favor, that I wouldn't be going. That it wouldn't be fair. That Rachel's mental health had been fragile ever since she dropped out, and she needed a stable home environment. That if I went, it might push her further into a spiral. That it was my job, apparently, to keep her afloat. They didn't yell. They didn't scream. They just calmly explained that I needed to let go of this selfish dream. My mom even had the nerve to say, "You're so talented, Jake. You'll find another path that keeps you closer to home. Something more practical." That night, I stared at the acceptance letter under my desk lamp for hours. I don't know what hurt more, the betrayal, or the fact that deep down, I had expected it. But here's the thing they didn't count on. I had a plan. I didn't throw a tantrum. I didn't beg. I didn't slam my door and cry. I just nodded, said I understood. And then, I started packing my bags. Not for college. Not yet. Just away. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face the morning I left. It was 6 a.m., and the house was quiet. I rolled my suitcase into the kitchen and left a note on the table. I had about $2,000 in savings from my job, a train ticket to a city 4 hours away, and a friend who had agreed to let me crash on their couch for a bit. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The note said, "I'm not Rachel, and I'm done pretending I have to be." I didn't hear from them for 6 months. Not a call, not a text, nothing. And I thought that was the end of it. But years later, after I built a life for myself from scratch, after I clawed my way up and made something they never believed I could, they reached out. Not for me, of course. It was about Rachel. She needed help. A job, specifically. And suddenly, they were proud of me again. Suddenly, I was such an inspiration. But this time, she wasn't good enough. And I hadn't forgotten. Not one bit. After I left, things didn't get easier, but for the first time, they were mine. I couch hopped for a couple months. Friends, sometimes friends of friends, even a night in a library that didn't kick me out right away. I took a job bussing tables at a 24-hour diner, worked graveyard shifts, ate employee meals, and studied at night on my phone. I ended up enrolling in a local community college. It wasn't the fancy university I dreamed of, but I was learning, growing, and finally breathing without needing permission. What hurt the most in those first months wasn't the struggle. It was the silence. No texts. No calls. No, "Are you okay?" Or "Where are you staying?" Not even a passive-aggressive voicemail. They had wiped me clean off the family chalkboard, like I'd never existed. And I won't lie, some nights, that gutted me. Not even out of missing them, but just out of the realization that I had been that disposable. Rachel, on the other hand, was all over social media. My old classmates would message me things like, "Hey, did you see your sister's new car?" Or, "Your mom posted pics of Rachel's birthday dinner. Looked nice." I'd pretend I hadn't seen, but I had. The birthday dinner was at a steakhouse I'd begged to go to on my 16th. That year, we had spaghetti at home and Rachel took the last slice before I got any. Still, I kept my head down. I got a small scholarship from a local nonprofit and saved up enough to rent a room with 2 other students. I studied business and computer science and picked up freelance gigs to pay for textbooks. Slowly, I built a life from the ground up. Then came the day I graduated. It wasn't a big ceremony, just a cap, a cheap gown, and my name called in a half-full auditorium. But when I walked across that stage, something inside me shifted. I wasn't Easy Jake anymore. I wasn't the spare tire in Rachel's survival kit. I was someone. I posted a photo on social media. Just one. Me in my gown, holding my diploma, captioned, "Didn't think I'd make it. Glad I didn't listen to the people who told me not to try." It wasn't meant to poke the bear. But within 2 hours, the bear came roaring. My mom called. I didn't pick up. Then came a flood of texts. "Jake, that post was hurtful." Rachel saw it and got really upset. "You know she's still trying to finish her degree. Why would you rub it in her face like that? We've forgiven you for the way you left. You should be more mature by now." That word again. Mature. They always pulled that one out when I refused to bend. I didn't respond. I was done handing out explanations to people who never listened the first time. Over the next year, I focused on my career. I joined a small startup, worked my way up, and eventually launched my own project, an AI-based resume builder that got attention from a couple VC firms. It wasn't a unicorn or anything, but it paid the bills, and then some. That's when I started hearing from them again. It began with small things. A comment on a LinkedIn post. "So proud of you, Mom." A DM from Rachel, 3 words. "Look at you." Then a call from Dad one random Thursday. I didn't answer, but this time, he left a voicemail. "Hey buddy, we saw the article about your app. Big congrats. Listen, maybe we could catch up sometime." They didn't mention the past. Not the letter I left. Not the years of silence. Not the fact that they'd effectively disowned me until I was worth bragging about. Now, Suddenly, they wanted to catch up, and I knew something was coming. I wasn't wrong. 3 weeks later, I got a text from Rachel. Full sentence, rare for her. "Hey, do you think you could help me get a job?" I stared at it for a while, trying to figure out how I felt. Rachel had dropped out again, apparently. The last college she attended kicked her out for poor attendance. She had been working retail jobs, but couldn't hold them longer than a few months. And now, it seemed, she'd decided that her little brother, who had once been forbidden from applying to college because she had failed, was her best shot. I ignored the text. 2 days later, my mom called. This time, I picked up. "Jake," she said, her voice all sugar and syrup. "I'm so glad to finally hear your voice." I didn't say anything, just waited. She launched into the usual. How proud they were, how amazing it was to see me thriving, how we always knew you'd do well. As if the years of silence and the guilt-tripping and the betrayal had just been a misunderstanding. Then came the ask. "So Rachel's been going through a rough patch. I don't know if she told you, but she's trying to get back on her feet. She just needs a chance. I thought maybe you could bring her into your company. She's great with people, and you know how charming she is. She just needs someone to believe in her." I bit back the laugh rising in my throat. Believe in her? They didn't want to believe in me when I had a 4.0 GPA and a scholarship. But now I was supposed to believe in her, after 3 dropped colleges, 5 retail jobs, and years of being told I was selfish for wanting a future? "She doesn't have a resume," I said flatly. "Not even a basic one." "That's where you come in," Mom chirped. "You've got that amazing resume app, don't you?" I thought, what a sweet story it would be, the successful brother helping his sister. I took a long breath, then said, "That's not a story I want to tell." Her tone changed instantly. "Jake, don't be like this. Rachel has been through so much. You've always had it easier." I cut her off. "Easier? You told me I couldn't go to college because it would make her feel bad. You called my dreams cruel. And now you want me to hand her a job. She's your sister. And I'm your son. But that didn't stop you from abandoning me the second I made a decision you didn't like." There was a pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Shaky. Then she snapped. "You always twist things, Jake. We did the best we could. Rachel was fragile. She needed us. And I didn't." My voice was low now. "Dangerous. Do you know what it feels like to leave home at 17 and sleep on floors? To watch your own parents post about steak dinners while you're eating from a vending machine? To get a diploma and have no one in the audience? Do you have any idea what that does to a person?" Silence. And then, the knife. "Rachel's not like you," she whispered. "She's not strong." That's when it all clicked. They never believed in me. They didn't want to. Because if they acknowledged my strength, they'd have to acknowledge their neglect. If they admitted I had built something from nothing, they'd have to admit they gave me nothing. So instead, they painted me as cold, as selfish, as the one who left. But I hadn't left. They had pushed me out the second they decided my success was a threat. And now? Now they wanted back in. But not for me. For her. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about a job. It was about rewriting history. About making it look like our family was whole, that we supported each other, that Rachel's failure was just a phase and Jake's success was part of some larger team effort. They wanted my story to patch the holes in hers. They wanted me to cover their shame. And I wasn't going to let them. What I did next changed everything. After that phone call with my mom, I sat in silence for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I'd finally said everything I had held in for years, and there was still no relief. No closure. Just the familiar emptiness that comes after speaking the truth into a void. I didn't respond to any more messages. Not Rachel's follow-ups. Not Dad's awkward attempts at small talk. Not even when my aunt texted me out of nowhere asking if I was really cutting off family over a job. The irony? I wasn't angry. I was exhausted. Because part of me had always hoped that maybe, just maybe, if I became enough, they'd see me. If I built something worthy, they'd finally treat me like I mattered. But now I saw it for what it was. They didn't want me back because they loved me. They wanted access. To my success. To my image. To what I could give Rachel that they couldn't. The fall wasn't sudden. It crept up slowly, like fog. I started pulling back from my work. Missed a few deadlines. Let a couple investor meetings slide. I stopped updating the resume platform and paused a contract with a promising client because I just needed a week. Then 2. Then 3. It wasn't burnout, not exactly. It was grief. Grief for the childhood I didn't realize I'd lost until years later. Grief for the family I kept hoping would change. Grief for the version of me that still believed success could earn love. The tipping point came one night in November. My roommate was out, and I was alone in our apartment, sitting on the floor with a cold plate of food I'd forgotten to eat. I glanced at my laptop, tabs open to job boards, half-finished code, a to-do list untouched for days, and I just shut it. All of it. Then I cried. Not quiet, cinematic tears. The real kind. The kind that comes from deep in your gut, where all the years of holding it together finally rupture. I didn't want to be a success story anymore. I just wanted peace. I thought about deleting the app. I'd gotten a few job offers to sell the tech or consult for other startups. It would have been an easy out. Cash in, close the chapter. But something in me resisted. Not out of pride, out of stubbornness. This thing I built. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving me right. I took a break instead. A real one. I disabled the app's front end, posted a simple message to users. Under maintenance. Thank you for your patience. Then I bought a cheap plane ticket to Oregon and stayed with an old friend who lived near the coast. I told no one, not even my roommate. Just disappeared for a bit. That month changed everything. My friend Emma lived in this tiny, creaky cottage that smelled like cedar and sea salt. She ran a secondhand bookstore and made tea out of actual dried flowers. We'd been close in college, before life and work and everything else made us drift. When I showed up on her doorstep with a backpack and a tired smile, she hugged me like no time had passed at all. You look like someone who forgot what silence sounds like, she said. Let's fix that. We spent mornings walking along the beach and evenings reading or talking by the fireplace. She never asked about my family unless I brought it up. She never pushed, just listened. One night, I told her everything. About Rachel. About the college rejection. About the voicemail. The resume ask. All of it. When I finished, I braced myself for the usual. But there's still your family. Or maybe it's time to forgive. Instead, she said, I'm so proud of you for leaving. That's when I broke again. But it was different this time. It felt like healing. After a month, I returned home, not to my parents, but to my life. And this time, I was ready to rebuild it without trying to make it look picture perfect. First thing I did was clean the apartment like my future depended on it. It sounds stupid, but decluttering felt like reclaiming space I'd been letting ghosts haunt. Next, I updated the app. Not just maintenance, I restructured it entirely. Made it more intuitive. Added features for people with unconventional career paths or gaps in their work history. Features that Rachel could have used if she'd ever tried. Then I posted a blog entry, not on my main feed, but on a smaller site I'd used in college. There's power in building something they can't take from you. Not just your work, your peace, your boundaries, your name. It got shared more than I expected. People reached out. Some shared similar stories. Some asked how I'd started the app. A few wanted to collaborate. One even offered to sponsor a resume builder workshop for teens who'd aged out of foster care. That one hit me hardest. Because in some twisted way, I had been an emotional orphan for a long time. But now, I had a way to turn that pain into purpose. I accepted the offer. Over the next 6 months, I built a small team. Just 3 people. All of them self-taught. One had dropped out of college due to medical debt. Another had been laid off during the pandemic and taught herself code on YouTube. The third was a guy from my community college who used to sketch logo ideas on napkins during lunch. We weren't flashy, but we were solid. We launched the new platform quietly. No press. No big splash. Just word of mouth. And it worked. People appreciated it. Especially the ones who felt left behind. Who'd been told they weren't good enough. Who had gaps in their stories, but still wanted to work, grow, start fresh. We called it Second Line. Not just because it was a second chance, but because some of the best stories don't start at the top. Meanwhile, my parents kept reaching out. Emails, voicemails, even a handwritten letter from Dad, which floored me. It was filled with nostalgic fluff. How I used to build Lego castles. How Rachel and I once played Office with old fax paper. How proud they were of what I'd done. But it never said, I'm sorry. Not once. Then came the real twist. Rachel posted on LinkedIn. A full essay, complete with a professional headshot and a caption that made my blood run cold. After a long personal journey, I'm finally taking the leap into tech. Excited to join the team at Second Line as a project coordinator. Forever grateful to my brilliant little brother Jake for helping me believe in myself again. Hashtag family, hashtag gratitude, hashtag new beginnings. I stared at the screen, blinking. She didn't work for second line. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year. She hadn't been hired, trained, or even mentioned in a single meeting. And yet there it was, posted publicly, with likes from old classmates, comments from my parents, even a few of my professional contacts saying, "So inspiring. Love this sibling story." It wasn't just a lie. It was identity theft. Of my name, my effort, my narrative. I called an emergency meeting with my team, showed them the post. We were a small crew, but tight-knit. Nobody had reached out to Rachel. Nobody had spoken to her. But someone had given her just enough information to fake it. And I knew exactly who it was. Because buried in the post, she'd written something that stuck with me. Jake always said there's power in building something they can't take from you. That quote. I'd written it. On the blog. The one I never shared publicly. Except once. To my mom. In an email I never got a reply to. That's when I realized they weren't done rewriting the story. They were just getting started. What I did next wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. But it was permanent. And it set off a chain reaction none of them saw coming. When I saw that LinkedIn post, something inside me shifted, like a floorboard creaking under years of weight. The exhaustion I'd felt before, gone. Replaced by something sharper. Not rage, exactly. Rage burns out. This was colder, heavier. Like a plan starting to form, piece by piece, without permission. I read the post again, slower this time. Every sentence crafted like a mirror image of my own story. She had borrowed my words, lifted my values, and stitched them into her own false redemption arc. She even referenced a small family startup that helps underdogs find their place. That was almost verbatim from a podcast interview I did 2 months earlier. The interview that had quietly gone viral in a niche career coaching space. This wasn't accidental. Rachel had studied me, and someone had given her the tools. I sat back in my chair, watching the cursor blink in the search bar. Part of me didn't want to believe it. Part of me wanted to chalk it up to some misguided attempt at reconnecting. But no, this was strategic. It was a lie carefully designed to make her look employable, to coat her in my credibility. She had learned how to fake competence the same way she had always survived, by letting someone else bleed first. And now it was my turn to bleed. Unless I stopped her. I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. You only get to play that card once, and I wanted it to land like a hammer, not a tantrum. First, I took screenshots. Of everything. Her post. The likes. The comments. The people congratulating her for turning her life around. There was even one from a former teacher. "So proud of you, Rachel." I knew that family strength would shine through. I archived it all. Timestamps, post IDs, metadata, every detail saved into a private folder named Reclaim. Next, I reached out to a friend of mine from college, Samir, who now worked in cybersecurity. I told him I had a situation involving impersonation and brand misrepresentation, and he didn't even hesitate. "Send me what you have," he said. "And Jake, if this is family, be careful. They don't always fight fair." That was the first of many truths he reminded me of. Within a day, Samir confirmed that Rachel had created a fake company email, not our real domain. She'd used it to send emails to a few small recruiters, even scheduled a phone interview under the title Project Coordinator. It wasn't just a lie, it was a con in motion. She'd even mimicked our branding in a fake PDF resume, complete with a mocked-up org chart that listed her under team development, with me as her supervisor. "She's ambitious," Samir said dryly. "Stupid, but ambitious." And yet, no matter how fraudulent it was, I knew something most people didn't. Lies, when told confidently, don't always get questioned, especially when wrapped in a feel-good narrative. People wanted her story to be real, and that made it dangerous. I had 2 choices. Call her out publicly, risking a family explosion that would likely get messy, fast. Quietly pull the string and watch the web unravel. I chose the second, and the first string was a woman named Natalie. She was one of the recruiters Rachel had reached out to. I'd spoken to her briefly months ago at a networking event, where we discussed possibly co-hosting a panel for non-traditional job seekers. She wasn't just sharp, she had a reputation for sniffing out fake resumes within seconds. I sent her an email. "Hey Natalie, just a quick heads up. I've seen someone misrepresenting themselves as a coordinator at Second Line. I noticed your firm was tagged in a mutual connections thread. If she reaches out, feel free to forward me anything suspicious. Happy to clarify. All the best, Jake. 5 hours later, Natalie replied, "Oh wow. Yes, Rachel emailed me last week. She dropped your name a few times. I had a weird feeling. Appreciate the heads up. I'll loop you in if anything else comes up." Boom. Ally secured. I kept going. I emailed the editor of the career podcast I'd spoken on, the one Rachel had plagiarized. I casually offered a follow-up interview and floated the idea of doing a segment on resume fraud. She jumped at it. Fake it till you make it was trending again, apparently, and they wanted someone with real insight. Perfect. I also checked the analytics on the blog post Rachel had quoted. Guess what? One anonymous visitor had spent nearly 45 minutes on the page the night before she made the LinkedIn post. IP address, same city my parents live in. I didn't need more proof, but it helped. And still, I didn't reach out to her. Not directly. Not yet. Instead, I messaged my mother. "Hey, quick question. Did you share my blog post with Rachel?" She replied 5 minutes later. "I might have. She was feeling low and your words were so powerful. I thought they might inspire her." Why? No apology. No admission of wrongdoing. Just a casual betrayal, wrapped in maternal concern. I didn't respond. Not until 3 days later, when the podcast episode dropped. It was titled, "When Success Gets Stolen, the New Face of Resume Fraud." They didn't name Rachel, of course, but the story was unmistakably mine. The quotes, the details, the fake sibling redemption arc that was lifted from my post. I spoke calmly, professionally. No accusations, just facts. I talked about how hard it is for young founders to protect their work, how dangerous it is when people try to hijack credibility through emotional manipulation. The episode blew up. Turns out, a lot of people had similar stories. Co-workers taking credit, family members copying projects, friends using someone else's success as a springboard. By the end of the week, the episode had over 60,000 downloads. And then, things got interesting. Natalie forwarded me an email. It was from Rachel. "Hi Natalie. I just listened to that podcast you shared. Really disappointed to hear Jake spinning things that way. I thought family was supposed to support each other. I guess I misjudged him. I'll be pursuing other opportunities." The audacity was stunning. But more than that, it confirmed she was watching. Good, because I was just getting started. I scheduled a company-wide meeting at Second Line and looped in my legal advisor. I wanted everything documented. We drafted an internal memo stating that no one named Rachel was or had ever been affiliated with our organization in any capacity. We updated our website with a statement. Second Line is committed to integrity and transparency. Please report any impersonations or fraudulent misrepresentations of our staff to this email. It wasn't flashy, but it was loud enough to send a signal. Then I made the quietest move of all. I sent Rachel a message. Not through text, not by phone, through LinkedIn. "Hey Rachel, saw your post. Impressive how well you remembered the things I've built. Almost word for word. Just so you know, we've issued a company statement about misrepresentation. Recruiters are being notified. This is your chance to take it down quietly before the real consequences land. Your call." No reply. But the post vanished within 12 hours. Not a word. Not a comment. Not even a soft goodbye. Just gone. And then, silence. Which would have been enough. But I wasn't finished. Because while Rachel was trying to burnish her image using my life, I had a bigger stage now. A louder mic. And I was going to use it for people like me. People told to stay small for the sake of someone else's comfort. So I did what I'd always done. I built. I launched a new initiative at Second Line, Ghosted Voices. A platform for people to share their professional journeys anonymously, especially those whose families, like mine, saw their ambition as betrayal. The stories flooded in. A woman who funded her own nursing degree while her brother got handed everything and still flunked out. A guy who was told he couldn't study engineering because his dad wasn't a math person. A girl who was forced to turn down a scholarship so her cousin wouldn't feel left behind. Every story echoed mine. Different details, same scars. And we amplified them. We partnered with nonprofits, launched workshops, created templates for confronting gatekeeping, whether from employers, families, or both. And all the while, I said nothing more to my parents. Not even when my mom emailed again, this time with more urgency. "Jake, I don't know what you told people, but Rachel's having a really hard time now. She's feeling attacked. I thought you were better than this." Still no apology. Still no recognition. Just guilt. That was their final currency. And I wasn't buying anymore. Because the setup was complete. Now it was time for the fallout. Not just theirs. Everyone's. I wish I could tell you I felt vindicated the moment Rachel's post disappeared. That I closed my laptop, poured myself a drink, and basked in the glow of justice. But I didn't. Not yet. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't about a single moment. It's not about screaming, "I told you so," or slamming a door on the people who wronged you. That's drama. That's noise. Revenge, the kind that lasts, is quiet, methodical, unshakable. It's when the lie collapses under its own weight, and the truth stands there untouched. So no, I didn't celebrate when Rachel deleted the post. I waited. Because I knew something she didn't. You can only fake competence for so long before someone asks for receipts. And I had all of them. It started 3 weeks later, when I received an email from a mid-sized tech company we'd partnered with for second-line workshops. Subject: a strange applicant. *K Jake. Someone applied here using your company name as prior experience, but she couldn't answer even the most basic project coordination questions. She said she worked under you, but didn't know any of your team members or tools. Just wanted to check if she was legit before moving her to the next round. Name's Rachel. Ring a bell? I responded with a formal HR letter. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Rachel, last name, has never been affiliated with Second Line in any capacity. Any claims to the contrary are false. We take misrepresentation seriously and have issued internal protocols to prevent misuse of our branding. I attached our public statement and offered to provide a full verification process for future candidates. They were grateful, said they'd remove her from the pool and flag the behavior. One spark. Next came another email, this time from a journalist who had been covering tech hiring trends. She'd seen the podcast, loved the Ghosted Voices initiative, and was writing a piece on resume fraud in the era of social media. She asked if I'd be willing to go on record about what had happened. I paused. This was the fork in the road. I could play it safe, keep things vague, protect the family name, stay professional, and move on. Or I could tell the truth. I thought about every night I ate peanut butter crackers while Rachel got birthday dinners. Every job I took to cover application fees. Every sacrifice. Every moment they made me feel guilty for wanting something better. And then I thought about how she tried to hijack the life I built from those very sacrifices. So I said yes. The article dropped 2 weeks later. The Golden Child Lie. When family tries to steal your future. It was powerful. Poised. No names, just initials. But the story was unmistakable. It walked through the betrayal, the emotional manipulation, the stolen quotes, the faked resume, the phantom email domain. The response was explosive. It trended on LinkedIn, Medium, even Twitter. People started tagging it under hashtags like #FamilySabotage and #TakeBackYourStory. Hundreds shared their own stories. Siblings who got the trust fund while they got the lectures. Cousins who cheated their way into opportunities. Parents who favored one child into oblivion while telling the other to stay humble. For the first time, my story wasn't a wound. It was a weapon, a blueprint, proof that you could walk away from the roles you were assigned and write your own. And then came the voicemail. From my dad. Jake, we saw the article. Look, I know things weren't perfect, but did you have to make us look like monsters to the whole world? Your mother hasn't slept in 2 nights. Rachel's barely talking to us. I mean, this is family. Can't we just sit down and figure this out like adults? You're blowing this way out of proportion. Out of proportion. Of course. Because for people like them, my pain was never the problem. Talking about it was. I didn't respond. But I wasn't finished. There was still the matter of Rachel's fake email domain. With Samir's help, we traced the registration to a free hosting site and reported it under terms of service violations. He also pulled the access logs and confirmed that the IP address matched the same general location as my parents' house. I filed a formal cease and desist. I didn't sue. I didn't need to. The threat alone was enough. 3 days later, I got an email from Rachel. Jake. I get it. You're mad. But do you really want to make this permanent? We're siblings. We shared bunk beds and cereal boxes and backyard forts. I made a mistake, okay? I was desperate. You think it's easy living in your shadow? You made it out, and they never stopped comparing me to you. I just wanted something for myself. Please don't do this. Rachel *. It would have been moving if I didn't know better. If I hadn't already watched her try to build a ladder out of my ribs. I didn't reply. I just forwarded the email to my lawyer, added it to the archive, and moved on. But the fallout didn't stop with her. My mom started calling mutual relatives, my aunt, my grandmother, even old family friends, telling them I had attacked the family online, that I was using my company to shame Rachel publicly. And to her credit, my aunt called me directly, but not to scold, to thank me. Turns out, Rachel had pulled similar stunts before. Not to this level, but enough to raise eyebrows, taking credit for team projects, claiming fake internships, even trying to leverage a friend's company name once for a freelance gig that never materialized. She's always been charming, my aunt said, but we were always afraid to say anything. Your parents wouldn't hear a word against her. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me. My parents had been protecting a version of Rachel that never really existed, one they needed to believe in. Because if they admitted she was reckless and manipulative, they'd have to admit they created the conditions for it. And if they admitted I was right, they'd have to admit they abandoned me for no reason at all. So they kept spinning the story. But this time, no one was buying it. At least not the people who mattered. Second line grew faster than ever. We got picked up for a national grant supporting career access initiatives. Our team doubled. We were invited to conferences. A major university asked if I'd consider doing a guest lecture. And through it all, I never once used their names. I didn't need to. The truth was enough. Months later, I got one last letter in the mail. A real one. Handwritten, shaky cursive. From my grandmother. Asterisk, Dear Jake. I read the article. I know it was about your family. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. Your parents made it sound like you were just being rebellious, but I should have asked you directly. I see you now, and I'm proud of you. Love, Grandma asterisk. I kept that one. Framed it, actually, because it reminded me that while you can't choose the family you're born into, you can choose the truth you live by. You can build something real, even if it starts with rubble. And you can walk away from people who only love the version of you that stayed small. My parents still send holiday emails. Rachel hasn't resurfaced. And me? I don't look back anymore. Because I learned something through all of it. Through the guilt, the exile, the betrayal. They tried to silence me by calling me selfish. But in the end, they just gave me a better story to tell. And I made sure everyone heard it.